it's one of the hardest decisions you'll ever make in your life. It really is.
I
We just
agree.
don't give enough credit to it,
Yeah.
but it's one of the hardest decisions you'll ever make in your life because it's your best friend
Yes.
and you want it to go as perfectly and, as possible. And that's really hard to do, especially because end of life, the last few weeks or days or whatever it is with animals can be really confusing.
From CareCredit, it's Care Experts, a podcast where we dive deep into the health and pet care industry with the professionals that make it happen. I'm Antonio Diaz, and this is Logan. Losing a pet is a profound experience, often akin to losing a family member. The deep bonds we form with our animal companions mean their passing can leave us grappling with intense grief and a sense of emptiness. And I know it firsthand. We're joined today by Dr. Monica Tarantino, a small animal veterinarian with extensive experience in general, emergency, and geriatric pet health. Dr. Tarantino is the co-founder of the Pet Loss Community, an organization dedicated to supporting pet parents through the grieving process. Dr. Monica, I'm so grateful to have you here. I know this is a very touchy subject, pet loss, and you work very closely with senior dogs, so I'm sure you've experienced your share.
Oh, yeah.
I recently had to put my shepherd down, Brooklyn. This is her here.
Aw.
She completely changed my life. She's the whole reason why I got into training and behavior. I became obsessed with training and obsessed with her for that matter.
Yeah.
So it's very, very close to my heart on this topic and dealing with it. I'm sure, like I said, you've experienced some. What are your thoughts and how have you navigated through that process yourself?
Yeah. First of all, I'm really sorry to hear about
I
Brooklyn.
appreciate you.
I think
Thank
she was
you.
amazing.
She was.
So, pet loss is one of those things that I think is really uncomfortable for people to talk
Yes.
about and to
Yeah.
even think about, especially in society today, right? It's just not like a comfortable thing for a lot of people to
Yeah.
talk about is death and loss,
Yeah.
but it's so important.
It is.
And it's also one of those things that I always tell people, you know, I do a lot of work with pet parents of older pets, and then they end up losing a pet. And I'm like, your journey isn't done there as a pet parent.
Yes.
Like, pet loss and the grief that comes afterwards, that is still a part of that
Yeah.
journey that we have with that pet that we had in our home and that we loved so much. And so it is very much something that we don't give enough attention to, and we don't give enough credit to just how much it can impact us.
Do you think that there are ways that people can prepare as far as like the anticipatory factor? Like what are some of the tips you would have for people to prepare for the passing of a loved one or a pet rather?
Yeah, and I do think there are things that you can do to help prepare for the loss of a pet. I really think that we don't talk enough about this, but I think that every single senior animal should have some sort of an end of life plan, which is it's daunting to think about, and
Yeah.
most pet parents don't want to think
No,
about it.
yeah, I
I
agree.
actually usually start having that conversation with pet parents when they may start thinking about quality of life, like, right, so when they're starting to think about quality of life, that's when I start having the conversation. But you really should be anticipating and possibly forming an end of life plan for your pet even before that. And that really is just something that I think is a way for people to start like thinking like, okay, this is one of the most important family members I've ever had in my life, and I do have some control, not a lot of control over how we say goodbye to this pet that's really important to me.
Yeah.
And so what would be best for that animal, right? How would that look like? And getting ready for helping get family ready for it, helping get yourself ready for it. Also thinking about what the steps would be that would help make it as peaceful as possible for that pet, because
Yeah.
we want to give them an ending with dignity.
Yep.
And we want to give them an ending, as you were saying,
Yeah.
with Brooklyn, where you want to make sure also that they're not suffering, right?
Absolutely.
And so I think that this idea of creating an end of life plan, which you can talk about with your veterinarian, you talk about with your vet staff, is a really good idea to
Yeah.
start you doing.
Well, I remember so we had to put our Yorkie Minnie down, right, in September, and then Brooklyn passed in December. But with Minnie, she was 17, and she was, my wife and I knew that her time was coming. Brooklyn was a little bit more a surprise to us. But with Minnie, my wife and I were discussing like that end of life plan, like
Yeah.
when should we decide
Right.
that? And through the process of kind of looking into it, we read something that just made so much sense and resonated with us. And it goes like this: it's better to say goodbye 2 weeks early than a day late.
Yeah.
And it's like, when you really think about that and what that means for us, it's like, I don't want to see the dog suffer for a moment.
Yeah.
Right. And I think a lot of times people are so, and understandable too, right? we're so caught up in the fact that we want to keep the dog. We want to keep that relationship. We want to keep those memories that we had, and we don't want to let go. But then we have to say, okay, well, what about the dog? Like
Yeah.
they're literally in pain. They
Yeah.
they don't want to get up. There's no quality of life. They're barely eating their food. You know what I
Right.
mean? They're going to the bathroom on themselves or in the
Right.
house, you know,
Right.
and especially with dogs that are well behaved and don't ever go into the house.
Yeah.
I know that they don't want to go to the
Yeah.
bathroom in the house, and they have to feel some type of way about the
Yeah.
fact that they're going in the house and can't even make it outside to the yard like they normally would.
Yeah.
So having that plan, I think, is so important, and being able to make that decision.
Right.
When you are working with your clients and patients, do you find that they share that same sentiment of like having the difficulty of making that
Oh,
decision?
yeah.
Yeah,
It's one of the hardest decisions you'll ever make in your life. It really is.
I
We just
agree.
don't give enough credit to it,
Yeah.
but it's one of the hardest decisions you'll ever make in your life because it's your best friend
Yes.
and you want it to go as perfectly and, as possible. And that's really hard to do, especially because end of life, the last few weeks or days or whatever it is with animals can be really confusing. Part of the reason, and you're talking about how we want to, some people want to keep them there. I do see some pet parents that maybe don't want to lose them, like, because they can't imagine their life without
Hmm.
them, so they might delay it too long. But one of the other things that I really see people struggle with is the fact that they're worried that they're going to end it too soon for the
Yes.
dog,
Yes.
right? Because you're towards the end of life, oftentimes you're getting towards that period of time, those animals will have good moments. They get up. Oh, they just went into the kitchen. They just ate some bacon.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they still want to be here.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, they still want to be here. If they want to be here, I don't want to end this too early.
Yep.
And then they go back and they have like a really lousy 7 hours where they're just laying there and really
Exactly.
lethargic. And then they perk up for a second. So they kind of do this thing towards the end for some of them.
Yep.
They're going through it where they have these good moments and these bad moments. And so with that, I always talk about this 50% rule. Like if you're seeing that, you're trying to make an end of life decision with your pet. I have this like 50% rule, right? So if like your pet most of the time, when they're at home, they're just showing that they don't feel good. They're not really eating very much, and they just have a few moments where they're acting like themselves. They're probably right. They're probably not feeling well most of the
Yeah.
time, even if they
Makes
do
sense.
have those few moments where they shine through. And that is one of the places where I feel like a lot of people struggle
Yeah.
because they just don't want to let go too early.
I've, for me personally, I'll say that my dogs are 100% family.
Yeah,
And I know I've had clients that told me about previous dogs that they've had and put down, and they're like, yeah, I cried more for my dog than I did when my grandma died,
absolutely.
and I think personally, from my own perspective, that dogs, in terms of our relationship with them, are like right up there with family members, human family members, you agree? Do you think people have
Absolutely.
grieved probably more for some dogs than they have for family members?
Oh yeah, I totally think so. It's so funny because we spend more time with our pets than we
Yeah.
do with our family members.
Yeah.
Truly, like
Yeah.
even with my mom or my brothers or whatever, that animal, like Orwell, was by my side every second of every day. And also, they're not judging us. They're
Yep.
just loving us.
Yeah.
They're entertaining us. They're a source of joy for us.
Yep.
And they're literally constantly present with you the entire time. You almost spend more time, they almost become more important to your day to day than even family members are,
Yeah.
as much as we love our humans. So yeah, I think a lot of people really bond so deeply with their pets that it's almost more, the grief that they experience when they lose a pet is
Yeah.
more than when they lose a person that they love deeply.
What are your thoughts on like getting a new pet right away or delaying?
It's so interesting. I think this is actually, it's such a good question because I think a lot of people really struggle with that.
Yeah.
Like they truly struggle with it. I'm currently talking to a pet parent that I work with, and she's truly struggling with that, like what to do.
Yeah. It's like a guilty feeling. It's
It
this idea
is.
like they're replacing the dog. And
Yeah.
like people, yeah. But I
It's
want
the
to hear more. But
guilt.
yeah, I mean, just off the top of my head, I've thought about that with Brooklyn. Is people ask me right away, are you going to get another dog? And I'm like, no. And not because I necessarily feel guilty, but just because I want to, I feel like for me, honoring her memory is just like waiting. I'm not in a rush. I'm not trying to use a puppy or a dog to like fill any void. I want to go through what I have to go through, and I have Logan. And so, yeah, I'm not in any particular rush personally for me, but yeah, I'd love to hear like how you've helped people navigate through those decisions, because I'm sure it comes up a lot.
It does. I think the most important thing to like remember when it comes to that is not to judge anyone for whatever they do because it's so different
Yeah.
with it. I have seen amazing families and clients that I've worked with that lost a pet and then they showed up 2 weeks later with a puppy and they're like, I'm so lonely and I don't know that this is the right decision, but this is just what I did.
Yeah.
You know, and that's fine. That's totally fine for that person. Then I've seen other people that wait years before they
Yeah.
adopt again, or before they get another pet, and that's totally fine too. So I think it's really individual to whatever you're feeling. I think one of the things I always tell people about when they are getting that pet is like not to put so much pressure on yourself or that pet to fill the shoes, right?
Yes.
Like, because no
Yeah.
one's going to fill the shoes of Brooklyn, right?
Yeah.
It is irreplaceable,
Exactly. Yeah.
what you guys
Yeah.
had together, and the significance she had for you. But there is room for different types of relationships, and there is room for different types of love, and even similar ones to grow with a different pet. And so just stop putting that pressure on yourself to make it like the soul dog number two that comes into your life right away.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to be that right away. So just give yourself like peace and grace.
Yeah, I agree. And I've seen people too that are just so devastated by the loss of their pet that the idea of having to go through that again,
Oh yeah.
it's very scary to them.
Yeah.
Even if they know that it's not going to happen for 10 years, they're going to have the dog for 10, 12 years or whatever. It's just like that idea that they're reliving the memory of like what they had to go through.
Yeah.
I certainly want another puppy and I cannot wait to get
Yeah.
one, but I know that time is not right now and
Yeah.
it's coming soon. So
Yeah. I think for a lot of us, sometimes it's innate as to when we're ready, you know,
Yeah.
like it just kind of clicks, but sometimes you just don't know.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. And it's also okay. It's okay to create, it's okay to feel a little bit of joy aside as like next to your grief, right? You can have both of those feelings
agree.
simultaneously. But there's this really beautiful quote that, you know, like time doesn't necessarily make the pain of the grief go away,
I agree.
but it does carve in some room for joy to kind of come in alongside of it.
I like that.
And so I like that a lot too. So there's so much guilt involved in this process of pet loss and the process of deciding when to humanely euthanize a pet, and the process of saying goodbye, and the process of did I do enough, in the actual after process when you lose a pet, that really like that always what I encourage pet parents to do is to try to take that guilt off your shoulders. We're all just doing the best that we can here with the knowledge that we have at that time.
Yeah, thank you for that. Dr. Monica, I so enjoy our conversations.
Yeah.
I honestly feel like I could talk to you forever. I'm grateful that you're here and that we're able to chat. And yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Of course.
For additional support, connect with communities like the Pet Loss Community, founded by Dr. Tarantino, which offers resources and group support sessions for grieving pet parents. If you're looking for additional information on pet care, check out CareCredit's Well You blog for articles like what are the 5 signs of grief after losing a pet, and is it time to let go? 13 signs your cat may be dying and how to help. Whoa. Don't leave yet. I just wanted to say, if you want to hear more about pet care, check out these episodes of Care Experts. And also, before you go, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button.